right. Welcome back, everybody, to the Optimum Drive podcast. I'm your host, Paul Gerard, the author of Optimum Drive, also former Top Gear Stig. This is presented by the Fast Lane Car. They do all sorts of cool automotive and truck, everything you could imagine, YouTube channels and testing of vehicles. So I'm very happy to be a part of their family. As you guys probably know, I do all their track testing for them whenever something fast shows up in the automotive realm. I go out and drive it on a racetrack for them, and I've been working for them for, I think, about 8 years now. I have a very special guest. I know I say that every time because, well, I only have special guests. And this gentleman, again, is a great representative of motorsports being done correctly. He has a career that starts very young in karting and championships there, working his way up the ladder system, winning championships, and along the way in the junior categories, and working his way into sports cars, where he's had an incredible career, touring cars, where he's had decades of unbelievable racing in touring car, sports car racing. He's such an icon there. He's won overall the 24 Hours of Le Mans 5 times, 5 times, the ALMS championship in the United States, Sebring, Daytona, multiple times, these championships, these races. He went on to become a Formula One steward for over a decade, and now is in charge of the McLaren Young Driver Development Program. That's a lot. That's about 5 people's careers all packed into this one extraordinary gentleman's career. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce to you the great Emanuele Pirro. Emanuele, how are you, sir?
Not very well if you call me sir, but yeah. Just hi to the listener, and I guess you must be a petrol head to listen to 2 old guys talking about motorsport, because the downside of having a long career is the date on your passport.
Yes, but, absolutely. Can definitely relate to that.
So I'm really happy. Just very quickly, I met you, Paul, a long time ago in an event, and immediately we sort of clicked because we saw the passion. We spotted the passion on each other, the passion of motorsport, but also the passion of analyzing and going deeper into what's going on. And I'm really happy that we have the chance and the opportunity to talk about these things in this chat. So thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, as I know you. I've known you for a long time. We haven't seen each other for quite a while, and it was just through basically talking to Alan Ignition and a mutual friend, Emile Boré. I was like, I need to have Emanuele on the podcast, because it's really, again, what you do and what you have done and what you have witnessed and what you have been a part of through many decades of motorsport. Again, sorry about, poking you about the number on your passport.
No secrets about my age.
Yes, exactly. And me too. But that's the thing about us old guys is I can speak for myself. I may not be very smart, but if you pay attention along the way, you do gain some wisdom. And you learn things as you go.
And yeah, and I think we're just talking randomly, and hopefully who is listening enjoys this sort of informal conversation. But yeah, having been around for a long time, I feel privileged because motorsport has been changing a lot, and I don't believe, and I will never say my time was better than now. And so many people of our age are claiming, if ever it was like before, now it's so bad. And I really don't believe that, but
I'm the same.
Was different. It was different. I think today it's a wonderful sport. Before it was a wonderful sport, but just different. And having witnessed the times, I started car racing in 1980 and karting in 73. So it's a long time ago. And especially the circuits were so different. And you guys in America are really blessed because the American racetracks are by far a lot more old school than the rest of the world, let's say, led
Yes.
by Formula One and safety. In fact, I am a member of the FIA Circuit Commission since a long time, and trying to keep some personality on the racetracks.
Yes.
So having raced in old circuits, like, you know, old Brno, even Nürburgring, because in fact the Nordschleife, so the famous long Nürburgring circuit now, it is the same track, but it's changed quite a lot. You know,
Yes.
the jumps have been smoothed out, and the
Yes.
roughness is gone, and so you name them. You know, Monza, the famous Lesmo 2, which was a very, very fast corner, has gone, and so on and so forth. So having witnessed those times, I feel privileged. Also, and please stop me if I talk too much, but now there is such a perfection on everything, and which is good. You know, a tenth of a second now is worth a lot. It's got a big meaning. But before, there was much less perfection. So there was more room for mistake, more room for recovery, and so on and so forth. So it was definitely a different motorsport. The only thing that for sure has changed is safety. And I had the privilege to speak many, many times with Sterling Moss, who was a regular host at Goodwood, which is a wonderful event. Whoever wants to go, it's just, you have to go. The whole history of motorsport is there in terms of man machine. Yes.
Yeah.
And Sterling was a wonderful person, and a very humble person, because if you talk to him about Fangio, you know, us racing drivers, we are, how to say, very reluctant to admit that somebody is better than us. I think I'm quite humble. I would
You're
like to
very
say
humble. Yeah.
In general, and Sterling, who has been really one of the greatest and acknowledged by many, many, many people. Talking about Fangio, he was saying, yeah, Fangio in Formula One, he was a better driver than me. But in sports car, I was giving him a hard time. And he was
That's awesome.
a very brave driver. And so he used to say, you know, motorsport now is not more difficult, not easier than as it was at the time. Just the danger is different. Imagine you are walking on a rope. In my time, we were walking over the Grand Canyon, and now you have a nice net under.
Yes.
So the challenges are similar.
Yeah.
And the risk and reward is different. And he was having, like, not really fun, but, you know, for him, doing something where if you get it wrong, you pay very expensive, was very rewarding. And sometimes, because I think a lot about that, safety is so important, we all know. And by all means, I don't want to bring back motorsport to as it was, but somehow I've never gambled in my life. I've never been in a casino, actually once in Monaco just to have a look, but I never put one penny in any gamble.
I'm the same way. I don't gamble.
But I think those who are real gamblers, if they would not do it for free. So I think the challenge of losing something, it is still valuable. And in an ideal world, it would be good that, you know, when you make a mistake, instead of going off on the tarmac and rejoining, you might, you know, lose a suspension or lose a race without hurting yourself. This could be probably a good balance.
Yeah, I think you're right. I always say, I've said it many, many times before, but it's the risk that makes me focus. And I think a lot of people are the same way, where the riskier the scenario you're in, whether it's motor racing or riding a bicycle or riding a motorbike or whatever it is, it doesn't matter, skiing, you name it, right? Anything like that, the more risk for me, the more focus that I have. And so it's interesting thinking of like motivation of a modern driver. Maybe it's different. Like you said, it's, the sport stays the same, but it's different now, different motivations. And their motivation has to be a little bit different now because it isn't like I have to do this well to stay alive. Now it's more based on success versus
Exactly.
survivability.
Exactly. By following young drivers is exactly that. And unfortunately, they are not afraid. And I think fear is the best safety tool you can have. If
Yes.
you acknowledge and if you realize that you can hurt yourself,
Yeah.
even remotely, but you can,
Yes.
you can protect yourself. And now the young boys, they basically, and talking very confidentially to them, they're just not afraid.
Yes.
But there is a lot at stake. And, for them
We
to,
were probably like that too at that age, just to remind you.
yeah, I wanted very badly to make it. Yeah. So,
Yeah, so you just, you don't, that's something you do. It's always there, but again, speaking of focus, it is not something you would ever focus on. You would almost try and suppress it, like, because you wanted to get through a Rouge and Raidillon, as quickly as you could.
yeah, the thing is, yeah, looking back, because the alternative was a disaster. I mean, for me,
Yeah.
I wanted to race so badly that there was no alternative. So if I failed, and there are so many times where
Hmm.
you're so close to fail, and even now, very often, actually, throughout the whole career, I've been thinking where I would place my ability. Am I worse than what I achieved? Am I better than what I achieved? At the end, I think things will balance themselves out.
Yes.
But I've always been very self-analytic and always
Hmm.
looking at what I could have done better to improve when many times things didn't go the way I expected. And what can I do to make it better? What should I have done to make it better? So this ability assessment has been there throughout my whole career. And so, especially at the beginning, the first 2, 3, 4 years before you really become sort of established and professional, every year is pass or fail. And if you fail, you go home, because I don't come from a wealthy background. So I had to rely on other people money, or sponsors and teams letting me drive for free. So if I failed one year, I had to
That
go
would be
home.
it. Yes.
And
Yeah.
fortunately, when you're young, you're not that wise, so the pressure was there. But if I had to do it now with the
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I have now, I wouldn't sleep
Yeah,
any
exactly.
night, any
Yeah,
night.
it just felt, I remember that feeling too. You were just, like a surfer riding this incredible wave and you just never wanted it to end and you never wanted to get
Yeah,
off
I
it.
like this. I like that. I
Yeah.
like that. And now, in fact, because I am responsible of the McLaren driver development program, so we are effectively investing on young drivers to find the new Lando Norris or the new Oscar Piastri when, hopefully, as late as possible, they will be gone elsewhere. Um, you have to make a choice. You have to make a choice, and you can imagine, as soon as you get to run such a program, your number of friends expand dramatically, which I like. No, this is a joke, but to every single person who contacts me, even if their ability it's quite low, or their experience is quite low, I just say, well done for daring to send me an email or asking for an appointment, because, as you say, the only shot you never put in the basket is the one that you don't shoot. So even if it's time consuming, because I want to give everybody a proper evaluation and a proper answer, but then when you have to make a choice between 2 or 3 people for one
Yeah.
deal, it's difficult. And I really hope one day one racing driver can say, without McLaren, I would not have made it. And
Yeah.
this would be my ultimate, because some people are quite wealthy, as we know. So some drivers don't really need financial support. For some others, it's just a pass of faith, like it was for me.
Yeah, the journey's never the same for anyone, and it's only easy if your dad could buy you a Formula One team, for example. um, but for the rest of us, it's always, and as you were saying, you're only, as the saying goes, you're only as good as your last race, and you have to just keep the results coming. Money gives you a buffer to fail and still keep momentum going.
Yes.
You could just, buy a ride that next year if you had a bad year, where if you were a talented person trying to get through and on simply your results, and you get in the wrong car one year, or just, get crashed out on turn one a bunch of times, whatever, you have a bad year, that could kill a career. Even
I
though,
just want to share one story. I've done my first. I was okay in karting. I was quite okay, I have to say. Then you moved to car racing. Fortunately, in my time, just before me, my karting friends who were ahead of me, the Italians, Elio De Angelis, Eddie Cheever, Andrea De Cesari. So there was a bunch of drivers who were successful in karting, Riccardo Patrese, and made it to car racing and sort of opened the door. And so people started to acknowledge that if you were okay in karting, you would be quite good in cars as well, more or less. And so I've done my first year to a category which is the equivalent of the Formula 4 now. So single brand promoted by Fiat Lancia Group, which was very big at the time. And because of my karting background, I got a very, very, very good offer. So we didn't have to pay. We found some sponsors, prize money, and so that was my beginning of motor racing career. But then year two, it was just a brand new ball game. So fortunately, I won that championship. Year two was Formula 3 European Championship, and the only thing we could afford was a very small team with a very good man who believed in me. So we found some sponsorship. It was a small team, and fortunately, we could find the resources. And you go to Europe, every circuit is new, and with a lot of hopes, but really no idea, because I won this championship. This is a fact the year before, but how competitive was the championship? Was it enough to say, I can make it as a professional driver? I didn't even dare to think about Formula One, just as a professional driver.
Trying to survive at that point.
Yeah, I always have more questions than answer. First race, let's say the first half of the championship, I was around P10, P12, and there was one team who was really very good with Mauro Baldi, who won the European Championship with the Euro Racing Marlboro sponsored. So those two cars were always first and second. There were the Martini cars, the Works Martini cars 3, with Aliosh, Lesser, and Ferté, who were just close to the Euro Racing cars, and then a bunch of semi-private Martinis, Philippe Streif, so good drivers. Didier Test, that he lives in America, you know him.
I know Didier very well.
Yeah, he's a wonderful person. And I was just behind. I was about 1 second off the Martinis, 1.2, and about 1.5 average second off the Marches. And this was not good enough. Of course, not testing.
Yeah.
We had actually the spare Michelin tires used by them, but still, if things didn't change, this was not good enough to hope for another season. Then we arrive at Zandvoort halfway through the season. We have an engine problem, so engines doesn't blow up, but at the time, if you didn't put the right fuel, there was detonation. So we have an engine failure. We did not have a spare engine, so we go to the Nova Motor, who was the engine tuner. Basically, everybody was running the Nova Motor engines. If they had a spare engine to lend us, sorry, we don't have. So my team had a car that he ran in the Italian championship with an engine by another tuner who was supposed to be not as good. And he said, okay, instead of going home, let's put this engine and cross the fingers. I go straight into qualifying with this engine, P4. So 1.2 second improvement. One Martini ahead of me, two Works Martinis behind me. So the Nova Motor guys, they come to me and say, hey, what's going on with this engine? And then, we say, or my team say, because I was a young kid, and what's going on with your engine? We put an engine which is supposed to be not good, and here we are. And since that moment, there were only 4 races to go, but I was on pole in one race. I won one race, the last race of the season. And in the very same time, so the Saturday when I was on pole in Imola, the 2 works teams, Martini and Euro Racing, came to me offering me a drive with a salary for the following, with a salary. So can you believe, Paul, if
that engine hadn't blown up?
Yeah.
That's a great
How
story.
many people out there never really had the proper chance? And the thing is, hadn't I had the engine problem, maybe even myself, I thought I was not good enough. Not that now I'm saying I was good enough, but at least I've done something in motorsport, So
that is a very humbling thing to remember, isn't it? Because you realize that was something that was completely out of your hands, having that engine failure, and it has such a positive impact.
Yes,
and
yes.
saved your
Nowadays,
season and maybe your entire career.
Yeah, this was, even now I feel quite bad about it, because you shouldn't find out like that.
But it's fascinating. That's the thing. So I've talked about this before, but it's one of the most amazing things, or I think the thing that makes motorsports, to me, the pinnacle of sort of human endeavor in a way, is because, like, let's say we were having this conversation and you and I are two retired track and field stars from running, like we had a career as runners. That would never have been an issue. Like, the only thing they would have to worry about literally is a pair of shoes. That's it. And they can go out and train. But motorsports is so complex.
Yes.
And when you put like the frail human element, like, we don't know if we're good necessarily because we have a bad engine. That's a difficult thing to wrap your head around emotionally, and for your own confidence. There's so many factors that affect your performance that are out of your control.
Yeah, but this should not be taken as an excuse, Paul, because there's a lot more a driver can do to improve his technical situation, so often. And this is, I actually tried not to use it with me in my career, because there's always good reasons to justify a not so good result. But one thing that I always had, and I think, and I try to actually transmit to other people, always question yourself. Whenever something doesn't work as well as you expected, but even if it does, the first question must always be, what could have I done to change it, and even to earn the engine, because we weren't given a good engine by the tuners, because at that time this preparer was basically deciding who had to win.
Exactly.
And if they don't give you the good engine, there must be a reason. And only by coming across champions, you realize that these people are not only good because they are fast, they are good because they push the people around them. They always, try to improve them and the people around them. Sometimes, if you get a mechanical problem, you lose a wheel or the car is not well prepared or whatever. Of course, technicians and mechanics are human beings and they always try to do the best job possible. But if they are in this winning mentality loop, if when you're fighting for a championship, when a big thing is at stake, everybody's work is elevated to a higher level, and so the driver can do a lot. And I've seen, when I came across Prost and Senna when I was doing the development for McLaren Honda, the intensity of the work they were doing, you just, as a team member, you just feel you have to upper your game for them and with them. And so the whole team becomes a better team.
Yes.
This does not only apply in motorsport. I think it applies in other areas.
Business, it applies in anything. And I set you up for that, and you took it and ran with it beautifully. So thank you for that. But that is the idea, right? And I think that's interesting when you specifically said, you've been with many, many great drivers. You've been lucky enough to race against them. You've beaten some of them. You've helped some as a development driver. You've kind of been full circle throughout motorsports with many different roles. And I think from that you get to see, you have seen, not uniquely, but it is your experience, so it is unique to you, but you've had an incredible experience getting to work with and raise your level to be like someone like a Senna or a Prost. And that's a pretty amazing thing, right? An amazing environment to be put into. And you probably found things within yourself and levels within yourself anytime, and that probably, you're 5 times with Le Mans with TK and with Alan and Dindo and that team. I talked about it with Alan, but the level that Audi Works team operated at was incredible.
Yes. And you said it. I think in a lifetime, a privilege is to come across very talented people, not only in sport, in everything you do, even at work. If you have a very, very good boss, is the best thing you can have, because if you are not arrogant and if you're willing to learn from these people, there is so much that you can pick from everybody. And sometimes I'm really thinking what sort of person I am, because when you keep developing, it happens as well as when you keep getting old. It happens slowly. So
yes,
you have to look at an old picture, or you have to look at your old self many years ago to see how different you are. And I think now really I'm a little bit of this guy, a little bit of this guy, a little bit of this guy, a little bit of this guy. And I really tried to pick, and I can name a lot of people who had quite an influence in me. So being able to work alongside excellence, it really makes you grow, and as a human being and as a driver. And I think this is a quality that everybody should really enhance, trying to pick as much as possible from other people. Maybe you are, in 10 things, 9 things you are better than this particular person, but in that thing that is better than you can still pick something.
Yes, yeah.
And unfortunately,
it's a very, very positive, very healthy, very clever, very strategic. You can think, like, there's so many words. That's just a great outlook on things, because there are, even people that you maybe don't like, there are things to respect about them.
This is a good point, actually, because I've had a lot more friends than enemies in motorsport. Very, 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 almost nobody I had a problem with. But there were a couple of drivers with whom I just couldn't get along. There was a lot of friction, and of course, when you're fighting for something, every small thing becomes big. So it's like an open wound. So these two drivers, we just couldn't get along. However, I really was able to respect them very, very much. So I never had bad feelings. It just didn't work. It
Yeah.
just didn't work. But I had a lot of respect for them. So it was, I don't want to say love and hate, because I never really hated, just from a professional and competition
Yeah.
standpoint.
Yeah. Yeah.
There were, hot feelings, but within myself and even publicly, I really had no problem to say he's one of the best driver I came across.
Yeah, they're definitely, I think that's another interesting thing about racing that's not talked about a lot, is that the in the car, you could be very close on lap time, you could be competitive all the time, but out of the car, you're completely different people. You don't have common interests, you don't have a common philosophy on life, you don't hang out with the same type of friends, you don't have the same lifestyle. But yet, when you race, and and again, in the car, it's nip and tuck the entire way, and you get out of the car again, and you're completely different people.
It was
It's fascinating in a way, isn't it? That
there's a
in the
little
car
story.
things can be.
One of these two guys is Mike Thackwill, who
Very quick guy.
yeah, extremely talented person, but very, maybe odd is not the right word, but very strange character, very strange. And we were fighting for the Formula 3000 championship. And the last race, I crashed into him. I think I crashed into him. So bad feelings, really bad feelings. And then we end up being in the same team in Macau for the Formula 3 race. And we are in a Boeing 747 economy class. So I don't know how many seats. We're sitting beside each other.
What are the odds?
And so I look at him and say, what do I tell him in such a long flight? There was a stopover somewhere. So for the first leg, no one word. I don't think we even look at each other. And then I thought I felt stupid, because he said, I wasn't really a grown-up man, but I wasn't a kid. I think I was 22 or something. This cannot work. And he was reading aviation magazines. So when we go back on board for the next leg, because I really love aviation, I bought an aviation magazine. I opened it up, and this was just triggered this. And I think he felt the same, because he's a very good boy, very, very good guy. Just, we had friction. And so from that moment, the second leg, we never stopped talking. Blah, 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 blah. So this just gives an idea of how intense are the relationships between racing drivers.
Yeah. And I think,
One way or another.
That's normal. It's it almost goes into the same mentality where you're gonna have to get in the car, and you're gonna do these passes at the end of the race that are gonna be very, very, it's gonna be 50-50 whether this is a good maneuver or not, but you must win the race. You have to take the chance. And so it's in those moments, it's almost better not to really like them a lot. So you don't feel so guilty. You don't know that he has a wife and a child, or that he's struggling to make ends meet, and that's not good information for that moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Even the most intense hate relationships, like Prost and Senna, that and because I was there at McLaren, so I lived it from inside. It was almost a toxic relationship. One of this most interesting and special rivalry in the whole world of sports, Prost and Senna. And when Prost moved away from McLaren, he went to Williams, and then when he retired, just the race prior to Senna's accident, Prost was in a commentary box, and he said to Prost, "Alain, I miss you." So it was until short before a toxic relationship. You follow all the things that they told each other. It was incredibly hard, and toxic, I think, is the right word.
Mm-hmm.
But then there was, at the end of the day, there was respect, and thank God Senna showed this respect just minutes before he died. And so even the biggest hate can, out of the biggest hate, you can find some respect. And it's hard to explain if you don't do an activity with such an intensity. But going from black to white, it can be quite quick, and balance is not really something that belongs to motorsport, or to the car, yes, but not to the people.
Yeah, let's hope the car is balanced. Good catch on that one. I think that's, the Prost Senna thing, and obviously they made the movie about it and all of that, and it's something really talked about. And Elaine came out just, I think it was a week and a half ago, and talked about how he thinks he's underrated as a driver, now through the lens of the movie and through sort of people thinking Senna, putting him on a pedestal where he's almost superhuman. Prost is going, "Hey, I beat that guy more often than he beat me. Why do you think of him that way and me this way?" I think that was pretty interesting, and of course, everyone's going to be drawn to that Senna personality, right? Because he is almost mystical in the way that he operated, and his incredible faith that he had, thinking he was sort of chosen to be who he was. That was all part of what made Senna. And it's incredible to look statistically, and of course, Prost had another championship, and as they were teammates, was certainly statistically his equal, if not maybe a little bit better. So I think that's kind of, what do you think about Prost's comments recently about people think he's, or underrating him as a driver?
It's a tricky question, because one is alive and one is not alive anymore.
We do it respectfully, of course, but
I think I feel closer to Senna because we were doing karting together. And in fact, as a matter of fact, not that I don't want to answer to your question, but a small anecdote. I was talking about that team who offered me a free drive for the next year in Formula 3. And I went for the team who won the championship, so Euro Racing. And we talk about for season 1982. So I became their driver. And I was number 2 of another Argentinian driver, Oscar Larrauri, for that season. And for the following season, 1983, I had to be number 1 of that team. And they were looking for a new driver. So the team owner was telling me, "We have to find a good driver for next year. Do you have any idea?" And I said, "When we go to Silverstone, I will introduce you to a guy who is very good, and I'm sure he will be very happy, and he will be very good." So I introduced Paolo Pavanello, the team owner of Euro Racing, to Ayrton Senna. So I went to Ayrton, and I thought I would do him a favor, because this is a Marlboro sponsored team. They would not only make you drive for free, but you have a contract. So it's the winning team in Formula 3. It's paradise. And imagine how stupid and naive I was, but that's another story. Please forget about it.
This guy, Ayrton Senna, whatever.
So they speak, but then Ayrton decided to do the British Championship, because at the time the British Championship had a value, and almost all the Formula 1 teams were in the UK. So he very politely, because he was a very polite guy, declined the offer, and he went elsewhere. So I almost chose him as teammate. It would not have worked because the following year that team moved to Formula One. Euro Racing became the Alfa Romeo Formula One team. So there was no Formula 3 season in 1983 for none of us.
Right.
But so I feel closer to Senna because of karting and all these things than to Prost, although Alain is a true gentleman and is a very, very good person. But what I wanted to say is that apart from the results, there is some magic, some chemistry that triggers people affection.
Yeah.
If you look at Gilles Villeneuve, he was not even close to win a world championship, but he made
I
the
think it's
world.
this.
Yeah,
It's
the world
this
was in love
and
for
this.
him. And I like this because imagine if we were judged only out of results, how boring. I think I really love when people read between the lines and see personality, and Ayrton was, in this respect, he was very special because what I think what people saw in him is he was prepared to give everything, and you could see when he was
Yes.
coming out of the car, not only the quality of the job he was doing, but the intensity of the job he was doing was incredible, and I think this is what made him be loved so much when he was alive, because sometimes when you die, it's easier to attract attention because you lost your life, and of course, sad story, but
Yeah.
he was incredibly popular when he was alive, and
Yes.
I think this magic didn't belong to Alan Prost, who was always driving in the smartest possible way.
Yes.
But in terms of quality, in those days, fastest lap did count because there were no tire change. So a fastest lap in the race, it meant that you were driving the fastest in that race. And if you look at pole position, definitely nobody could beat Senna.
Yes.
Okay, now he's been beat by Schumacher and Hamilton, but
A lot
in
more
terms
races
of
a year
one
and all
lap
that.
performance,
Yeah.
one lap performance. But race pace and intelligence, racecraft, and so on. Unfortunately for Alain, he came across a very special person like Senna because and also Alain is a political guy, and for me, one spot I have to say, which is really there in his career, is the Suzuka incident when he drove against Ayrton, because footage is very, very clear.
Yeah.
Because both people out, he would be champion. He drove against Ayrton, and Jean-Marie Balestre basically persuaded the steward to disqualify a guy who lost a lot of seconds, is being pushed, restarted, went back to the pits, changed the nose, and still won the race. And I was
Yes.
racing that. I was in that race. I was racing for Benetton.
Yes.
This was one of the, if some athletes can deliver something extraordinary, which goes beyond the law of physics, which for me, as a very sort of scientific guy, pragmatic, it's hard to say what I'm
Yes.
saying, but
Hard to
somebody
admit
can
it.
deliver something
Yeah.
beyond the law of physics, that was delivered in that weekend. And this was one of the biggest injustice in the whole world of sport. And Alain Prost didn't need that. Of course, it was Balestre who did it, but for me, this is something that if I were him, I would feel ashamed, because he didn't need this dirty help to in his career, and this is probably why now he feels like he has to tell the world, or some world,
Yeah.
no, guys, I was a good driver indeed, because he not only won 4 championships, he's been runner-up, I think, in 3 or 4 others.
Yes.
So, but
Yeah,
yes,
his legacy is complete. I mean, he has the
yes,
record to prove it.
incredible. But yeah, his reputation is in the heart of the world's motorsport fans. I think is on a lower level than his real value as a racing driver.
Yeah, yeah,
I
fair
hope
enough.
he forgives me if I say this, but
No, I think you said it in the right way, because in the way you kind of came full circle back and answered my question, it was perfect, because you talked about, Senna's popularity, like Gilles Villeneuve's popularity. There's that something special about those guys where, and it goes back to you talking about safety, doesn't it? I mean, these things are all connected together, where it's that gladiator mentality that existed in the Roman Colosseum times, where for the fans, where they want to see someone that is going in there and willing to risk everything, and that is something that is very admirable in a person, and is very galvanizing, where people will be attracted to that type of larger than life personality, where they're going to give their all, and that's who people want to support, because they love that idea that maybe that exists in them, you know.
this is before, when I said I don't think today is any worse than yesterday, and I really mean it. But one thing that motorsport today misses is when a driver, because driving is such a science now, everything is so perfect and drivers are
Yes.
so well prepared. The quality of the driving now, it's
Yeah.
incredibly high, and unfortunately it's very difficult to appreciate how good these people are and
Yes.
how well they drive. However, in the older days, you had a feeling after a race, because it was more physical in my time, Senna's time, and probably from 80s to 90s, it was the time when Formula One was most physical. You would see Senna after a race, and Mansell and these guys almost finished. You could see that they gave everything, and I think this generates sympathy from the fans, because
Yes.
you see your hero that has done. It's like in a football match. I don't know how much, and football for us
I
is
know.
called
Soccer.
soccer. Yeah. You know, the fans are really extreme in football. Nobody likes to lose. However, if they see that their team has been giving everything on the field, they will not whistle.
That's a
It's
great
it's
analogy.
how cruel a little bit,
Yeah.
but bicycle racing, you cannot say it's a spectacular sport as such, but people love it, and I love it, because you see a human being giving everything
Everything.
he has, and you can read it and you can see it. And I think this is missing a little bit in today's motorsport, because the quality cannot be well perceived, and the intensity, it's different. So you haven't given everything from a physical standpoint, as before.
As a matter of fact, of course, last year, I think it was Bahrain, where it was very hot, and the drivers were, complaining, and there was a lot of backlash saying
It was Qatar. It was Qatar.
Qatar.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I didn't like it, because this is where how it should be every race.
Yes. To your point. And actually Hamilton said that. He goes, that's why we're fit. He was the only one that I know of. Maybe there were others, but he said it's
No, no,
supposed to
true,
be hard.
true,
Yeah.
true, and it's supposed to. And this is why, again, I'm not talking bad, but it's so hard to perceive. Also, cars, they all look good because they are so firm, and I'm sure, yeah, but for those who are listening, even if a car looks glued to the ground, when you drive it, you feel you have not enough grip, and the car feels like
Yeah.
sliding a little bit, but it doesn't give the impression that they are really on the very edge. And unfortunately, somehow Formula One and motorsport must find a way to make people appreciate more the
Yeah.
quality of the work they do, which is very, very high.
I think what's funny about that, and of course you have direct experience at the highest level in both ends of this spectrum, but that's when sports cars got really interesting was when, you know, Michelin produced a tire for Le Mans that you could just race as hard as you want on. And suddenly Le Mans became, and the reliability of the cars came along with it. Talk about bringing the levels up together. And you had now a championship where there's endurance racing happening at 100% from the first lap to the last lap. You guys are going flat out. And to me, the Formula One issue that you're talking about is the tire. If they had a tire they could race on, they would race on it. But they don't.
True. And yeah, endurance racing, which I've done quite, let's say, quite a big part of my career.
Here comes that humility part. 5 Le Mans wins.
No, my best memories are in the US, the American Le Mans series.
I remember you telling me that. Yeah.
So nice time.
Yeah.
But I've done endurance in one season in 1981, because as I told you, because of this Formula Fiat Abarth championship in my first season, I won this championship.
Yeah.
And at the time, the Fiat Lancia group was very big, believe it or not. But Fiat and Lancia were been big once upon a time, and especially motorsport. Lancia was at the top in the World Rally Championship and in the
everywhere. Sports car.
With the beautiful Martini colors.
Yeah.
So Cesare Fiorio, the head of this program, so was a great man. Because he's alive, a great man. And crazy enough, he asked me to race for them in the following year. So from part-time, because I was doing Formula 3, and we talk about the season of the engine, so the very beginning of my career. And actually, he took me to Daytona, which, as you know, it happens end of January, beginning of February. And Daytona 24 hours, for me, was the very first race outside Italy. The races of Formula Fiat Abarth were 25 minutes long. Here, actually, he took me there, and he told me, bring your helmet and overall, but just in case. So he didn't really tell me you're going to race. And he told me, just in case we put you in the car for a few laps, have a go in with our car. So he set half a day of testing, which was a bunch of laps in Mugello. Of course, to save money, I live like 3.5 hours, something like that, from Mugello. And he said, be there at 8 a.m. You will do some laps in the car just in case. And of course, now, you know, you would go there the night before with your physiotherapist and so on. And I had a Volkswagen Polo 120 kilometers per hour, which is about 65 miles. I left at 4:30 a.m. in the morning to go and test the fastest car I would ever touch in my life. So do this test and went to Daytona, and it was a World Endurance Championship at the time, and Lancia was competing in eventually Lancia won the World Championship. So it was a big race, and he took me there. The race went very well because we actually won it. It is a lot of luck because a lot of people break down and so on, but we were the winning Lancia, so we scored the first 20 points of the World Championship, and I was young, so for me, and also I wasn't captured by this racing because you had to go not really slow, but you had to be very gentle with the shifting,
the
braking, even because there was no chicane at the time. So to give the turbine some lubrication halfway through the straight, you had to back off and go back on the power again. So for me, racing was about going as fast as you could for the whole length of the race. So I didn't quite understand this and didn't quite like, maybe it was arrogant at the time, but I thought I prefer single-seater racing. Anyway, that was a big thing. Then I did Le Mans and another race later in the season. But what I want to say is only on a later stage I realized how brave Cesare Fiorio was to put me in the car with zero experience. And so because we kept in good touch and good terms, just once I felt like saying, Cesare, it's been a long time, and I thanked you a lot, but now I realize how much you risked to put me in the car, and I'm really, really thankful. I was a kid at the time, and you know what he replied? I said, I was a kid too, which meant you have to take some gambles in life,
Yeah. That's
and
amazing. That's amazing to
yes,
have that conversation again, decades later.
because you put things in perspective, and when you're young, you've got some arrogant, maybe
Yeah,
not.
I mean, I use that word describing myself when I was young.
You
I
don't
was arrogant.
appreciate things, and
Yeah.
you just give a different value when you grow up on a later stage.
Yeah. It's amazing. And that's what endurance racing, of course, it was for a long, long time. It was really just it was an endurance trial for the car.
Surviving.
Yeah, and that's how it was used, Le Mans being over 100 years now, but it was always used to prove the technology of the car, not necessarily the superiority of the car, not necessarily the fastest drivers, though that came along with it hand in hand. But it
But
was more
now,
focused on that.
now it's very different. And when I went back to Le Mans, actually, the Le Mans in 1981 has been probably the worst experience I ever had in my racing life, because we were two in the car, and I didn't take the start because I was the most junior. So I took the second stint, and I got in the car in the second hour, and there was no chicane on the straight. So there was this 6 kilometer flat out straight, very fast. We weren't super fast, but some other cars were above 350, above 220 miles per hour or something.
Yeah.
And I do one lap flat out, and the second lap I pass over the straight, and there's a massive crash where one driver lost his life. And when that kind of car crashes on the trees at that speed, it's like a war scene.
Like an airplane crash.
Yes, exactly. And the poor driver was laying there. So that was a shock, and also a shock because how can a car crash on the straight? For me, I love racing so much, and I was prepared. I believe in meritocracy a lot. So I told myself it's risky, but I'm happy if I make a small mistake, I pay a small bill. If I make a big mistake, I pay a big bill. If I make a major mistake, if I deserve, I'm prepared to die. This was my naive equation.
Yes.
And here I see a car crashing on the straight, which obviously cannot be a driver error. So, and passing many times until they cleaned the track, and it was really, really, really bad. Then we did one more lap on full speed, and again another major crash of another car. The driver survived, but one marshal died, another one was wounded. So ambulances and people laying on. So that stint was horrible.
Man.
Really, I couldn't wait to come out of the car. I come out of the car, I give it to my teammate, and I just take a deep breath and try to find the motivation to go back in the car. He's about to hand the car over to me again for my next stint. I'm ready with the helmet, and he doesn't pass by. And so there was obviously a problem. And then the news came, because at the time, 1981, there was no television and there was no radio. So we are told car 67 had a major crash on the straight, which was true, and the driver is killed, which was not true. Beppe Gabbiani was uninjured. He flew over the Armco and he collided with another car, so he crashed. And so I told myself, this endurance racing, it's not for me. This is not the racing I like. Until many, many years later, when I went back with Audi, and it was just almost love at first sight, because nowadays endurance racing is really, as you said, speed racing. Basically, apart from crashing, the driver can do nothing wrong to break the car. The engine is controlled electronically. You
Yes.
cannot overrev, you cannot downshift and overrev.
Yeah, exactly.
If something breaks, it breaks because it breaks. But the only thing that the driver should do is drive as fast as possible through traffic, limiting as much as possible the risks. But basically, it's a speed race, and every corner, you have your delta time on the dashboard. Every corner, at every end of the corner, you look at your delta time and see whether you've done the corner properly or not. And it's just a long speed race, which is very fascinating. You still need things to work your way,
Absolutely, absolutely, because everyone else is doing the same thing, so yeah, so strategy and all of that. I talked with Alan quite a bit about the Truth in 24 film that was done, that was just, I think, just one of the most brilliant sports films I've ever seen, and really captured.
Wrong year, because they picked the worst year.
Yeah, all right,
I
understand.
but seriously, a wonderful
Alan was
film.
like, yeah, let's talk about that year.
Yes. Unfortunately, that was
once a race car driver, always a race car driver. But that was, I mean, just talking about how, and you were saying it earlier when you were talking about a tenth of a second, and in F1 and in sports car racing, of course, it's such a high level where the most, I mean, you talk about like having to do a brake change, or the fueling is very controlled, of course, but all of those, anywhere that you could find any time. And of course, Audi almost changed sports car racing, took it up another level because of their professionalism.
And this was a privilege. Actually,
incredible.
I was mature enough to realize at the time, because sometimes you are part of certain things that you only realize afterwards how privileged you are, like this Daytona, this Lancia races that I did at the time. When we won the race, I remember Fiorio came to me, and because also the timing screen wasn't there, so you almost don't know that you won the race after 24 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And he came to me and he said, I hope you realized what you have achieved. And then went back home, and the press and so on. But
amazing.
The Audi adventure, I was, let's say, mature enough to really, even at the time, appreciate the privilege of being on board of such a high quality adventure. Forget about the results, because really either one of us could win 2, 3, 4, 5. It was almost like flipping the coin, almost.
Yes, between the team cars, yes.
But the preparation path that you witness and you contribute to, for those who like technology, or like organization, who like preparation, it was unbelievable. And also the secrecy, because Audi, they were maniac about secrecy. So for instance, because before we were doing touring car racing, and Audi had a rallying background, and before that, basically no racing background, unless you went all the way back to the Auto Union Silver Arrow pre-war time.
Exactly.
And so for Audi to go and compete with sports car racing would have been almost a wild dream, if you like, because touring car is high tech, but nothing compared to a sports car, where the rules were not limiting so much the technology.
Yeah.
And so they decided to do, which was for me really, really a good move, because I needed more speed. Because I've always done touring cars alongside my single-seater career, Formula 3, Formula 2, 2000, Formula 1. Alongside, I've been racing touring cars. But then after my last year in Formula 1, 1981, after that, I only did touring cars. and because of Audi, we were privileged to always fight for winning races and championship. And it was really good, because if you are on board a vehicle or a program where the ambition is to win races, whatever you drive, it's a privilege.
Brilliant. It is a privilege. Absolutely
yes,
right. Absolutely right.
it's a privilege.
And it isn't,
Whatever you do,
it's rare. Yeah.
But
Tell me about your story car.
after sometimes
Yeah.
I just wanted more speed. So they tell me we're gonna do Le Mans, but it's top secret. So top secret, we sign an NDA, and
yeah.
we could not even talk to our wives. Don't
Wow.
ask me if I told her or not, because no, but really they were maniacs. So initially it was an engine preparation and so on, but then at one stage we had to go out with the first prototype, and where to go to hide ourselves at best. So we decided to go to Czech Republic, a circuit called Most, which is quite
I've never
far
heard of it.
away, quite remote. But of course, the circuit didn't have to know who we were, because then, it would be easy for them to make 1+1. It's a sports car, although it's a prototype. So we had, the track were all blank, rental cars were everything but Audi. And we had blank overall and blank helmet. There was myself and Frank Bila were doing the initial development. And we had fake identity.
Wow.
My name for them was Emile Piller, and Frank, I don't know. So we had fake identities. So the circuit didn't know our names. Otherwise, if Pirro and Bila drive a car, even if there is no identification, it can only be an Audi. So this is just to let you know the level of secrecy that Audi was putting in place. And then the technical preparation. Audi designed a car for the whole rear end to be changed in under 6 minutes, because a transmission failure is something quite common. So the concept of Audi was not only to design and build the most reliable possible car, but if something broke, it had to be changed in a very, very quick time. And this was a very, very smart move, because during our path, there were a lot of times where we had collisions or stuff, and the capability of changing parts very quickly saved our race many times. So this change of rear end that we could do in such a short time, it was a top secret. And in our first first race in 2000, we actually had an issue with the bearing, so we weren't sure, but we had enough lead and we knew that we could change it quickly. So car goes in the garage, gets jacked up, and the whole rear end come off, and a new one comes on, and in less than 6 minutes we're back on track. And this was
it's still talked about today. Like that was like a seminal moment in sports car racing, what Audi developed, what they did in that race. And it's a clip you can find on YouTube. You can see it in Truth in 24, the movie, but it's a famous moment, isn't it? A really famous moment.
And to be part of this adventure,
yeah,
also with the other drivers, because of course there was a rivalry. We all wanted to win, but it was a very healthy rivalry, and this is mainly, I think, for two reasons. One, they picked drivers of more or less equal ability and more or less equal seniority, no junior who wanted to come and conquer the world. And also our leadership was very, very strong and very smart, and very competent. Yes. And this made, sometimes you see some winning operations, and like Red Bull now in Formula One, and I don't want to say it looks easy, but there's a lot of hard work behind it, and a lot of competent people who contribute to this. And it's a fine balance. It's enough that one thing doesn't work, and things might fall apart easier than you think.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
you know, I'm not
Well,
not
I
you.
mean, it is an important lesson. I mean, all the details do count, and it's when you have that environment where it isn't toxic at all within the team. It isn't acrimonious between the drivers. They're all there sort of as a family and with a common goal, and so then everything is positive. There isn't any infighting within the team where someone is trying to not trying to promote an idea that isn't good. It's all, everything is done. And as I always say, it's like a little phrase behind every decision that's made that you add there. You say, we're doing this because it makes the race car faster.
You know,
Every decision is made to
we were
improve the performance, not because of my own personal political motivations within the
ego. Yeah,
team.
oh yeah.
It's just to win, to win, to win. And when that happens, it's magic. It's magic.
When before we were talking about frictions with drivers, and then you talked about Alan, who was your guest a while ago or short ago. Alan and I, we had an issue, quite an issue, because I was on board before because I was with Audi since '94 touring cars, and then
Yeah.
'99 went sports car. 2000 he came on board, Alan, and our first race in America. And Alan was racing for my Formula 3000 team Onyx, that I was in very good terms with them. So he, excuse me, he raced for them. So I felt sympathy, also because it's a small guy, and I just felt sympathy for him. So he came, and I sort of welcomed, because I was senior at the time within the team, with open arms. And Alan, now Alan is quick talking and quick reacting and quick, but it's like the shadow of what he was before. He was the most competitive
Yeah,
person.
I know.
It was the condensation of a nuclear bomb in a small city. So we go and race in it's a short oval, maybe Dallas or whatever. It was, yeah, a short oval, and it was qualifying. And in the infield, I just had my time, and for I, I didn't look in the mirror, which normally I'm quite disciplined. And he came at full speed with his qualifying lap, and he had to abort the lap. I felt bad, but it's not major thing, you try again, and with sports car racing. So, but of course I felt bad because I didn't mean to. So go back in the pits, and I wanted to go and apologize for the sake of, good relationship. And then he comes to me very aggressively. And then, racing drivers are touchy. And I told myself, no. I feel bad. I want to apologize, but you treat me like this. What is a synonymous of fuck? I said, screw you, Scotland, your friends, your
Oh,
what? And then that thing, I got really upset, and so we had an argument, and basically we didn't talk to each other for a long time. We were professional. We weren't driving the same car, and there was friction for a long time. But I always had the utmost respect for him as a driver and as a person. And it was getting almost ridiculous, that trying to avoid each other and so on, until few years later, maybe 2 or 3 years later, something like that, we had to share a car. It's a little bit like Mike Tackwell
I was
sitting
going to say, did you buy an
in a plane.
airplane magazine? Yeah.
We had to rent, share the same car from Miami to Sebring, which is quite a drive. And
Right.
we start talking, and I really wanted to stop this stupid thing, because it was a nonsense. And it's something like when you do outing, and he was the same. He had the same feelings for me. So from 1 minute to
Nice.
another, we became best friends, and we
Nice.
are really in very good terms. And
Yeah.
so that was funny.
It is just, it's a hard thing to manage, right? Like I was saying, in the car, we need to be a certain way, and out of the car, we don't need to necessarily be like that, but it spills over one way to the other sometimes, and it creates these problems. And it's a competitive world.
Yeah, very
And then
much
you
so.
get, and we were talking about like statistics versus emotion earlier. You don't want to be judged on how, not just on the statistics, but how you inspire people maybe along the way as well as a racing driver. And I think all of that is just this crazy thing that is motorsports, isn't it? All those things.
No,
You were talking about touring car, and we haven't really talked about it. You said you were with Audi. I'm kind of guessing, did you race them when they were Quattro, and then when the Quattro was banned?
yes,
Were you
yes,
there through both those eras?
yes, correct. And actually, I got into touring cars. Um,
And you go way earlier, obviously.
yeah, way
Yeah,
earlier, way earlier. If
Schnitzer,
you don't mind.
with M3s and
Yeah,
things. Yeah.
yes, if you don't mind. But um, again, I was thinking about single seater in Formula One. This was my wild dream, my aim when I was in Formula 3. And one of my good friend in karting and in Formula 3 was Roberto Ravaglia.
Mm-hmm.
And then in Formula 3, also Gerhard Berger in 1983. So we were good buddies. And the following year, Roberto cannot find the budget to go on in single seater. And Roberto was a good driver. So he has an opportunity to drive for the Works BMW run by Schnitzer. At the time, it was the 635. And Gerhard was already supported by BMW, so they paired together. And Roberto found that being a very good alternative career, and he became immediately very good professional driver, so earning money, which is not to be, I mean, money is not everything, but it's a personal satisfaction when, the year before you cannot find the money to buy your drive, and the year after they ask you how much you want to drive my car. Personally, it's an incredible feeling.
Yes.
So they were needing a driver for one race halfway through the season, and I don't know if they mentioned my name was BMW, but just they called me up to do a race in Monza. It was a European championship at the time, so long distance races, 2 drivers per race. And again, of course, no testing. I went there with an open mind, I have to say, but with a slight arrogancy, thinking these touring cars are slow, it's for old people. I want to go Formula One and so on. But I find a beautiful. Cars were not fast, of course, not as fast as single seater, but good racing,
Good competition. Yeah.
hard racing, and good teamwork. And Schnitzer was a wonderful team headed by Charlie Lamb. So, and then Gerhard and Roberto, it was just a very nice environment. So I liked it. And because I was doing quite okay, let's say they offered me a contract. And basically, since then, I've done every year for 9 consecutive years contract with BMW to do every race not clashing with my Formula One activity. And I thought this is a good plan B, because single seater career is very uncertain.
Yes.
So if it doesn't work, I am an established touring car driver and I can race, which was for me even more important than going to Formula One. Just race
A career. Yes.
somewhere. And so that was the reason why I put a lot of effort into touring cars, which was a little bit difficult because even in my Formula One days, I was racing touring cars, and also in my Formula One days, I was still developing the Honda McLaren. So I was doing a lot of activities which were not ideal to focus only in the Formula One program, which was enough, difficult enough. Then end of Formula One, I had an issue with BMW. Normally, I'm a loyal person, but there was a new boss. Don't want to go in details, but just it just didn't work. So even with the contract for the following season, when the chemistry is not there, let's call it chemistry, it just doesn't work. So we split parts, and Charlie Lamb, who was, I say was because unfortunately he died a few years ago, a wonderful person and a very good friend. He told me, I'm so sorry that you leave us. I understand the reason, but I tell you that now there's a manufacturer who is coming back into racing who would be ideal for you, and you would be perfect for them. And he gave me the number of this
Wow.
Dr. Ulrich, who was since 1 month at the helm of Audi Sport, because Audi Sport, after the DTM days, they had a break for 2 years, so no touring car racing, and they were coming back. And so I pick up the phone, I call this Dr. Ulrich, I tell my story, and I say, because I wasn't super young at the time, I was like 30, 34, 30, and with quite a long career. So I didn't want to give him the feeling that I wanted to do just a few more years to cash some money and then retire. So I said, here is my situation. If ever you need a driver, I would be very happy to talk to you. And he said, let's talk. So he comes to Rome, believe it or not. Now the driver has to go to the
Yeah,
team, but he
exactly.
comes to Rome. I go and pick him up. He still pulls my leg with the BMW M3 and a BMW jacket, which we spend the day together. And basically what I told him is, I want you to realize, or to show you, that I'm not here talking to you for the money. I really want to race very badly, and I want to do well. So if there is a car for me, I'm prepared to sign a contract for 1 year with the salary that you decide. Whatever you pay me, I'm happy at one condition, that year 2, if things work well, we negotiate a salary not based on what you pay me on the year 1, just based on a brand new negotiation. I think he liked that. He offered me a very good salary, so he didn't take any advantage at all. And this was the beginning. So I was the first driver picked by him, and he was the beginning of a wonderful, long
Wow.
relationship.
That is amazing. So I didn't realize Dr. Ulrich was there at the start of the touring car program. I thought he kind of came on board later with the Le Mans, the prototype stuff. So
No,
that's
no.
that's
Yeah,
amazing.
since end of 93. End of 93.
Wow. Yeah. And as I say, you raced, so that was the Quattro,
That was Quattro, and
A4 Quattro. Yeah.
yes, initially was the Audi 80 year 1, and a lot of technology at the time, even if it's a small touring car, but without electronics, with the 3 differentials, it was such a difficult task to make the car fast. 3
To turn in.
differentials can generate a lot of friction,
Yeah.
and the power was not so big. So to
Yeah.
make it work, so much testing, so much development. It was such a privilege because the budget was not an issue at all at the time. So it was basically all you can eat, and the cars were so good to drive. The first race I did, now I don't want to say because it's too arrogant, but
Let's just say you won your fastest lap of the race and you drove away the field all the way to second place.
I was on pole. I was on pole. I didn't win the race, but that was a good feeling because, of course, you want to present yourself in a good way. And however, that technical path was really, really good. But then the problem was let's say the federation, because the other competitors were either rear-wheel driven cars or front-wheel cars. And of course, we had a weight handicap, but we were the only 4-wheel driven car out there. So what is a fair weight handicap? So how good is an Audi as a 4-wheel driven car compared to how good is a BMW as a rear-wheel driven. So, of course, the others were complaining a lot. So, year by year, we were getting more and more ballast until the last season before Quattro was banned. We were too heavy, so we didn't win the championship. This was 1986, I think. Yeah, 1987, 97. Sorry, 97. Then it was banned, Quattro, and so we had to race with the front wheel driven, and that wasn't very nice because the engine of the Audi is placed in a way which makes it
very forward.
Yeah, so that was not a great season. And the year after, we started with sports cars. So you imagine how
so you just had the 1 year with the front wheel drive car.
Yeah, this was just a perfect path,
Yes.
You drive something really good and enjoyable. You stop winning because they make it heavier. You do something that you don't like, and then boom, it counts.
I love
the good
that.
thing about Quattro was
I love that.
Ford and Nissan, they tried to do a four-wheel driven cars with very good drivers, because at one stage people thought it's enough to connect the traction to the rear to win races. And I mean, they're great manufacturers, and but in that operation, they were always last and second last, always at the back of the field. And this was good for us because I felt frustrated because I knew how much how much work was behind this operation. And because we were the only one with the Quattro, it wasn't so evident. So that was really good for us to, or at least for me, to showcase of the quality of the engineering behind this car.
Yeah, it's a really cool story. And obviously, we both have this Audi history, but yours much more interesting than mine. But it was cool because after it had been banned in touring car competition, then they brought it to the US and they ran it 1 year in Trans Am with the 200, the big sedan, and won the championship, and then it got banned. And then they moved to IMSA with the 90, and they did the same thing, won the championship.
But this was before.
Well, it was 89 and 90 was when they did that.
Yes, exactly. And what I'm talking about is 97, 98.
Oh, so yes, it was before, and then you came after. Sorry, I got it switched. Yes,
but that is the story. If you are the only one, it's hard for people to understand that there's a lot of technology. It's not just the traction that helps you, but also that program for the drivers. It must have been for Hans Stuck and Walter Röhrl and
yes, Hurley Haywood was in there 1 year, and they were it's all like with all-wheel drive, it's really the friction reduction, isn't it? It's all work within the differentials and the drivetrain to try it, because like you said, touring cars are 300 horsepower cars, weren't they?
Yeah.
So it wasn't like you had all this power when they were racing in Trans Am and IMSA. You could have 700 horsepower. You had double the power you had to play with.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So it's very different than touring car, where those cars did incredible lap time for a saloon car that only had 300 horsepower. The lap time of a touring car was quite astonishing because it was so efficient getting through the corners. The engine's very low and back.
Yeah, it's a lot of
beautiful technology.
These are good times. And actually, as a matter of fact, just a few years ago at Goodwood, somebody restored one of these cars and let me drive for a demo. And you sit in the car, and I have a bad memory. I have to admit, names and facts. That's a weak point I have. But in terms of driving, I don't know why I remember a lot of things, and I sat in that car, and it was my seat and my seat position, so the ergonomy was exactly as it was, and I could start for a qualifying lap. And so I started the car, and it felt so good, so good. And I thought, what a privilege it was to drive this car. So nice.
Yeah, that's the amazing thing, and I think that's something with your career, and again doing touring car alongside with single seaters the whole way. You just had this. I don't know. It was just clever the way it worked out. And it was a bit of a plan because, like you were saying, you always knew once you had driven touring cars with Schnitzer, you were like, this is a good career potentially. If Formula One isn't something I can sustain for, an entire career. So that was a very, very smart way to kind of stay within motorsports. And of course, the reason it all worked so well is because you got results. And that's something, again, you're too humble to
Yeah,
talk about. But I want
as
to,
I said before, I question myself. I try to work really hard and improve myself, and also sometimes you earn your contracts also outside the racetrack, by doing
yes,
the right things and by not doing the wrong things. And but
yeah.
how much I deserved, how much was luck, how much I don't know. I don't know.
Well, I
All I
mean,
can tell you, I'm really happy
there's a
with.
little bit of that in motorsports for sure, but I think your approach and your professionalism and the fact that you're the humble guy you are, you're an easy person to like, and I mean, and that's it sounds like a corny thing, but that's an important factor where you're saying like outside of the car, that's the ideal driver. It's someone that's easy to get along with, but gets the results when they're in the car. That there's no more simple formula than that. And easy to get along with when you're out of the car, but also that means you have to be, a good businessman as you were. You had to understand relationships and make sure you maintain them and develop them and all of that. And yet in the car, you need to get results. So there's that combination.
Now the profile of a racing driver is so different, and I'm finding it out with my job at McLaren, because before basically you had to find out yourself what to do and how to do it in
Yeah.
terms of driving and in terms of how to find opportunities. Yeah, there were managers. I never had a manager, but there were managers. But basically, somehow you had to figure out yourself what to do, what not to do, how to do it, when to do it, and in terms of driving especially. So how many people could have potentially be good, but they did not have this intuition in the first place
Yes.
to make them earn their next thing and so on and so forth. Now there's an ecosystem around the racing driver, and there's so many tools, and there's a real science behind
Yes.
driving. Even at Formula One level, it's amazing to know that part of the debrief after each practice is how to improve the driving. In my time, if somebody, even the very best, like Lewis Hamilton, is told by his performance engineer what to try to optimize the driving for that given setup, the given
Yeah.
temperature, the given whatever. In my time, if somebody would have come to me and tell me how to drive better, this was just, you would slum it,
Yeah.
and so driving was so much more imperfect than now.
Hmm.
Now you have to be so accurate, and this is why a tenth of a second difference now is worth a lot, because even a little bit less talented one, they can achieve a much higher level because of all the tools around, and then they sit in the car so much. The entry level of motorsport is Formula 4, and now in the winter they all do a Middle East championship, so they do 5 times 3 15 races in 5 weeks time. Then they do the championship, then they do 30-40 test days, so basically almost every day in the car. This is why a much higher level of perfection is required, but yet, fortunately, the very good ones, they emerge over the
It's still
only
down
good
to,
ones.
yeah, yes,
But
exactly.
how to spot that difference? Because as you know, it's like a pyramid. If you at the very, very top, there's maybe one or two,
Yeah.
and then you go a fraction below, there's maybe 5 or 6, and a
Yes.
fraction below, there's like 20. And
Yes. It goes exponential on you.
how to determine, and this is really what I have to do in my job now, how to read between the lines, because a lot of the quality is inside
Yes.
you know, determination, commitment, resilience, modesty, because if you are modest, you question yourself and you keep improving. Empathy, how to
Yeah.
interact and get the best
Integrate with
out
the
of the
team.
people
Yeah.
around you.
Mhm.
Um, uh, Being cool when it counts, you know, the ability to deliver when it counts. And so many qualities that I try to talk a lot to the drivers and try to learn as much as possible, read inside of them, and also transmit certain things by the experience I had. And it's a privilege to be at the helm of this project.
Yeah, I mean, that's really incredible. And I mean, as for what I do and for what what I write about and I coach and all those things, um, it's one of the most exciting things for me is this young driver development and what you get from that and all you learn and all the tools, like you're saying, that are at your disposal these days.
The only thing is you want to be young and you are not young anymore. But
Yeah, you're like, I want to go through this system and do it. Exactly.
but the good thing about being a driver now, if you're good in karting, let's say quality has got more chances to go through, because like last year I went to see a World Karting Championship, and there was a guy from Red Bull, a guy from Ferrari, a guy from Audi, which
Wow.
was Alan, by
All
the way,
right. Yeah, of course.
Alan McNeese. A guy from Williams. Basically, everybody was there fishing for talent. So if you are good, somebody will knock at your door and you will have a chance. And this is good. This is good
Yes.
because meritocracy is an important thing.
I think it really is. And I think I mean, that's something that's great for people to hear, that if you go through the normal progression and you go into karting and you end up in the European Karting Championships, if you make a name for yourself today, whether you're, the son of a billionaire or not, there's potential. It still does exist for those that are quick enough. And I think it's amazing. Like for you, you're trying to wrap your head around all these different attributes of what makes a great driver or a potentially great driver out of like you said, it could be hundreds of good drivers, into the maybe 10 really good drivers, and you're trying to figure out the top of that pyramid. Who could make
Yeah.
it? Who could make it to the top? And there's so many attributes that are in there, and any one of those missing is like a line of bad code in a computer program. At some point, it's going to trip them up and it's going to stall their progress. And that's what they're counting on you to sort of sort through all that, develop
Yeah.
them, and
Because
even out and iron out and eliminate the weaknesses and get them on the right levels on all those different attributes. There's so many of them. And it's difficult, like you said, when we're young, we don't want to hear it. It's, we don't want to hear it. We're like, hey, I'm fast. That's all that matters. Put me in the car. I'll win races. You're like, there's more to it than that. There's more to it than that. You won't consistently win races, like you said, unless you're humble and you can question your
some
own
people
ability.
genuinely think that they are at the very top because they never had the privilege to be around with the very best, you know. So
Yes,
unless you really measure yourself with the very best,
you
who
can't
can
say
tell
it.
you who
Yeah,
can tell you how good you are? And sometimes people, even parents, they genuinely think that their sons are very, very good.
of
This
course.
is a little bit sad because you can only measure when you go and compete with the very best, and
Yeah.
then
Yeah, and it's still, that's again the beauty of motorsports. It's still results driven. It's still a meritocracy, as you say, and it has to be because ultimately it's a competitive endeavor. It's not, you know, just one thing. Like if you were trying to build a new rocket company, it still gets competitive, but you want the best engineers, but you're just doing what you're doing. But in racing, every single weekend, you're comparing yourself against everybody else that does it. And there's nowhere to hide.
throughout my career, I never really looked at the strong points. I always looked at the weak points and where to
That's,
improve.
yes.
So, which is good. However, sometimes, as we said, I think, like many people around, I learned from many people I came across, and not only as a racing driver, actually as a human being and as a sportsman. So many managers or team managers or team owners or other drivers, and I actually almost could name the different characteristics that I try to not steal but inspire myself
Yeah.
on. Um, and so there was, and again, I don't want to be too complicated, Paul, but what appears not doesn't necessarily means that it is what it is. But for instance, a driver and a good friend since the early days of my karting career up to Formula One was Andrea De Cesaris,
Hmm.
because he was 2 years older than me, and but we grew up together in karting. Then he went to Formula One a lot earlier than me, and we have been teammates in Formula One for a season. And he was the most, apparently, because again, I think if you dig inside, you almost don't know yourself. You can imagine the other people, but he was the most self-confident person you can ever think of, you know. And that self-confidence, I try to steal a little bit without a lot of success. So I think the characteristic I still have. So questioning myself and always asking myself, where are the areas where I can improve? What, not really
Hmm.
what have I done wrong, but what have I done that could have been done better? I think it really helped me um, to improve, but also to stay, let's say, at the top for many years. Because first of all, you get old, as you know, with all due respect,
I
we
don't know
all
what you're talking
experience
about.
this process. And also the sport changes, and the requirements to be good enough change. The way cars need to be driven change. Technology changes. One example for all, the braking technique. We grew up with a clutch that had to be somehow depressed, at least on downshifting, and then at one stage the automatic paddle shifting came across, so you didn't use the clutch. You didn't have to use the clutch. Therefore, left foot braking was
Hmm.
not really required, but of course advantageous somehow. And within the Audi, because this transition arrived when I was at Audi in the late 1999 2000,
Yes.
and this was the first time where I had a car like this, and I was the first one to immediately switch to left foot braking, although I was the oldest of the lot. And so this is just because of the desire of always trying to learn and to be up to date. I think this characteristic helped me to stay relatively competitive until, I think, I won the last Le Mans at the age of 46, I think, which is not
Hmm.
super young. I
Right.
mean, you guys have Mario Andretti, so compared to Mario, I'm still a junior, because I remember one of his quotes saying, "The biggest mistake I've done in my racing career was to to retire too early, I think at the age of 61 or 62. But seriously, normally for this level of racing, that age was already, let's say, not super young.
Yes.
However, questioning myself all the time and try to learn from people all the time was a big help. Sometimes a little more self-confidence, tendency to blame the others. I cannot name this person, but a good friend of mine who was a Formula One driver, when I was just debuting in F1 prior to the first Grand Prix, I was asking him, hey, is there anything you can tell me, any advice, anything? Because he was, established Formula One driver and successful. And he said, Emanuele, I don't know. Yeah, one thing. Whatever happens, if you crash, even if you crash in front of everybody, whatever happens, always blame the car. Never take the blame. Of course, it was before all the data acquisition and stuff, but I remember this advice very well, and you can guess if I followed or not. I didn't
It doesn't
follow
sound like Emanuele
it.
Pirro to me.
No,
No.
not so much. So, as often happens, I think a good balance between different characteristics would have been a help. But again, I always try to learn from different people, and sometimes it would be good if, because you like everybody, as every human being, you keep developing, like you keep growing or you keep aging, but the process is rather slow. So
Yes.
with physical aspect, you can look at photos and immediately you see, if you are a junior, how much I grew. If you are a senior, how much I aged. But in terms of character, in terms of assessing who you are and who you were, it's quite difficult. It would be good to have to meet your old self or young self and see how different you were. And I think it could be interesting.
Yeah, I think it's funny, there's that saying, youth is wasted on the young, where it's like you wish you had your 20-year-old body with your 50-year-old brain, because of all the wisdom that you accumulate over that time, and how you squander your physical attributes when you're young. Like, we both talked about, like, you said it, and I was like, I was like that too. We're kind of arrogant when we're young. We don't think we can get hurt. We don't think we can learn a lot. We think we know everything already. We think we're immortal. All those types of things that are the great part of being young. Kind of, in a way, you look back and you go, man, if I had just been a little bit more open-minded, if I had been more willing to be coachable, if I had paid more attention, where would I be today? You see. I think we all have those conversations with ourselves,
However, I still try now, and with a certain degree of success, I have to say, try to keep that young boy inside of me, characteristics that normally fade away with age, a very little bit of craziness, if you like, but also enthusiasm and just looking at things with a positive attitude. Fortunately, I can still keep it, and I think this is helping me a lot in still being so happy and so grateful for what I do. And as you know, Paul, everybody has got tough days, and my life is super busy, and as you can imagine, not always super easy. There's always a lot to do and so on, but I still try to look at life with a big smile, and with an opportunity to learn something new, and so from one end, this contributes to organize or to make my life even busier, much busier than how I could do. Sometimes I admire friends. I have former drivers who they just live a very balanced life. They do exactly what they want. They get invited to one place, or they get asked to an interview, or they get whatever thing which can be even an opportunity. I feel like doing, I do. I don't feel like doing, I don't do. I think in terms of feeling good, it's probably the best, but I just can't. I still, at my age, think that I should invest my time for
Mhm.
learning, to improve, to become a better Emanuele. And every day I'm quite happy, because every day, by doing a lot, by interacting with people a lot, by working hard, and by traveling and so on and so forth, you just keep improving. Of course, being realistic, you don't have so much time to use what you have learned, but still, somehow, I know it's crazy, but I still think the best part of my life is yet to come, and this helps me to to keep positive.
Yeah, you've always struck me like that as well. And again, it is like you were talking about, with your friend that said blame the car. It's amazing how many different personalities and approaches and attitudes there are within a group of drivers that may be very competitive with one another. It's some people are, they're very negative, they're very hard on themselves. I mean, I think it runs the gamut. You could look at a chart of psychological traits, and you'd say, yeah, I know a driver like that, I know a driver like that, I know a driver like. You could probably run the board with all the different types of drivers that there are, yet when they're in the car, they can all turn a very similar lap time, and certainly I think those traits may affect their consistency, because we know how important driver confidence is in being able to maintain a level of driving. So you might see them maybe being more up and down with their performances versus someone that's a little bit more even keeled and steadier with I know drivers that base their self-confidence on what other people think of their driving, and it's just like in life, that's not a good idea, because it's about believing in yourself, and you do it for the right reasons of the satisfaction of driving that race car. You love driving it. You're not driving it to please someone else. You're driving it because you love doing it. So I think it's really fascinating. And to be honest, if I met you on the street, and I didn't know who you were, you would just seem like a super normal, nice gentleman. That's how I would describe you. But then, after maybe, going to Wikipedia or reading about you and your wins and how competitive you were throughout your entire career, from karting all the way through, and again, running formula cars, running touring cars, and having results and championships and so many wins, and your ALMS championships. And again, there's such it doesn't, to be honest, it doesn't necessarily seem logical on the surface that someone so nice as you has such a strong racing pedigree and track record. So what's different about you in the car that makes that possible?
Yeah, thank you for your question. Really triggered my thinking. I think some people say that when he puts, or when you put, or you wear your helmet, you become a different person.
Mm-hmm.
Put the visor down and you become a different person. A little bit like when you drink and you're drunk, you do things that, but I don't believe in that. I think
Okay.
you are yourself, and when you're drunk and you say certain things, you say because somehow you mean it, but you didn't dare to do it
Yeah, well, that's what, yeah.
when you were sober. I don't think when you drink, you
You're
put down
different.
another person.
You're just less filtered.
Enhance yourself. And
Yeah.
also the driving, of course, it is true that some people appear to be very quiet, and then they are big bastards on a racetrack. But at the end, I think we all have a brain, and it just different sides of the brain are used. Occasionally, I have been an asshole. I have to say, not too bad, not too bad. I think I was quite aggressive, and I kind of liked that myself of that period, especially in touring car racing, because my self-confidence was very, very high in this category and in this time, that I felt, I could do a lot with the car. And but for instance, I have done one thing that now I feel ashamed. Of course, it's different times, but there was a time where it was a difficult season with the Works BMW. The car was not competitive, and there was that one race where we were at the top, and I knew this was probably the only opportunity of the whole season. And just very early in the race, very, very early, I was pushed off by an opponent. And I really thought, for no reason, and this is true, basically for no reason. It was just an aggressive attempt to whatever. And I wait for him because I had I think a bent suspension, or even just flat spotted the tire because of the spin, and he was leading the race. When he came to lap me, when I was on the way to the pits, I've done something very, actually the execution was super smart. If it wasn't for a bad thing, it was a perfect execution, because it didn't look deliberate at all. It looked like almost he made a mistake. Yeah.
Crime.
And I laugh, but I'm not proud of myself, because
Right.
this is not really myself. Although, today you would be banned for,
Right.
but this was in very, very early 90s. So, but however, I have done it, and I have written in my autobiography, and I think you should not hide the bad things that you have done. So I have done it. It means that a certain episode triggered some reaction to me, that the bad side of me came up, and I've done it. And I remember that we were, because of course there was a big story afterwards, and I didn't want to admit that I did it deliberate, and it was hard to defend my position. So they closed us in the Mercedes motorhome, and I said, come out only when you've sorted yourself out. And this guy was telling me, Emanuele, you pushed me off, and why don't you admit it? I didn't do any. I was lying, almost like I was another self, but it was me. So you have to be a little bit of a bad guy sometimes. Let's say not too often and not too much.
Well, there is certainly there's a gentleman's agreement within driving, and that's always been there, where we race each other as hard as we can, but we don't want to cause any physical harm to that other person. But then within races, within knowing that, you also, obviously, you always see this sort of escalation, where it's a move without contact, then it's a move with light contact, then it's a move with.
Exactly. This is a very good point you make, and this is why today, especially in Europe and in F1, racing is heavily controlled by the stewards, and I've been a steward for 13 years in F1, because you just cannot avoid, because, as you say, there has been an evolution, not only in car technique, not only in driving technique, because I guarantee you now the level of driving performed today, it's so high because of all the
Oh.
analysis that they do, much higher than the best drivers of yesterday and of day before yesterday. And also the defending and attacking technique are a lot more developed. If in 70s or 80s, if somebody was quicker on a straight, the guy in front would not even dare to move, and zigzag and weave around. You just try to press your throttle as much as possible, but otherwise he would pass you. And blocking somebody on the braking, pushing somebody off the track, and there has been an evolution, and I think some drivers especially have contributed to make, let's say, a leap forward to an extent that now, then in the older days, if you did something wrong, it was normal that you would expect it afterwards, something in return. Actually, this guy never did it to me, but probably because he never had the chance. Because if otherwise he would have done it, and
You
he would be
remembered. Yeah.
he would be right, and he would have deserved it. So you could, within limits, there was a balance that actually was working. So I wouldn't do. So first of all, because the danger was a lot more. So
Yeah.
this was an element really to be considered,
Yes.
especially, of course, in the 70s, even more. And then if you traffic in qualifying now, even when you're lapped, and this is something I don't really like in F1, you have to almost vaporize to let the leaders go. They cannot even lose 1/10 of a second behind you. I think this is extreme, but it is what it is. And in qualifying, it accidentally you don't see somebody coming, you penalized. It is what it is, and as long as it's the same for everybody. But in my time there was no penalty for blocking somebody in qualifying. You would try not to block because you were for sure if you do block somebody, even if it was unintentional, the next race you would get it.
They'll get you back.
Sure.
Yeah.
So that was the way it was. We live in a different world, take it or leave it, and this is why the work of the stewards has to be per request of the drivers and the teams themselves, that they want to be regulated and they want things to be fair, but they intervene a lot, and I think because I think culturally motorsport is not ready for a referee to be so active sometimes. There is some negativeness. So people, I think in America it's different, but let's talk about Formula One. Very often when there's a penalty, which is a fair penalty, people at home do not take it in a good way, and
let them race. You hear or you see? Just let them race.
Exactly. Let them race. But first of all, it would be unfair. It would be dangerous because drivers now are so smart, and you cannot pay back. So of course, if you cannot give back what you get, then you dare to do more. So they are asking for this, but culturally, I think we are, as a motorsport, let's say, world, not ready to, like the track limits. Some people don't understand track limits is really, for me, it's like a cancer of today's motorsport. I am a member of the FIA Circuit Commission, and I'm also there's a working group dedicated to track limits. So this is a topic, and I'm in this working group. There's a topic very hot for me, because I think fairness is really, really important. And if you go wide, even by 10 centimeters or even less, you have gained an advantage because you have come out of the corner with a little bit more speed. But it's hard, and I understand, people maybe a little bit naively say, how can you remove the lap time? He only was out for 3 inches. you cannot
We
have,
know that's a competitive advantage.
yes, and you cannot have, some shade of gray.
Yeah,
You have to have a cut. Like if a car is underweight by 1 kilo with
that's
the
it.
tolerances and everything, you cannot say it was only 1 kilo, because then you give a
Everyone's
score
one
that's
kilo
bigger.
light. Yeah.
If somebody's another kilo and
Yeah.
somebody's another kilo, so I know it's hard, but soccer, what you call soccer or soccer, and what we call football, that is normal. If it's offside, when it's proven, even by an inch, it's offside. If the
Yeah.
ball is within,
Or tennis, you can think of.
yeah, exactly. So I think we need to improve the culture of our sport, because
Yeah.
it's
The,
changed.
the thing I have with it being a white line is I know the visibility is incredibly poor in the modern F1 cars for being able to actually see that white line. I mean, it would be interesting to say, how far in front of the car do you have to be looking to see that white line? It's pretty far.
I know, Paul, but I believe a lot in meritocracy, and I think these guys are very, very good. So
Yeah.
yes, you don't see by the half an inch, but when there's a wall that bites you, you see the wall
They
that
can
bites you.
see that. The thing that I would say, the thing I would just add to the conversation was it should be something physical that they can feel with the car, like a
This
corrugation. You know what I mean?
this is what FIA is
Then they know.
actually looking to have, and this is quite difficult, because you cannot have something that hurts you, especially something also,
The sausage curbs, that kind of,
yeah,
yeah.
but also many circuits have to be used by motorbikes, and you cannot
Yes.
ask a specific curb for cars and a specific curb for motorbikes, because this is not sustainable. But now the new tendency is to have gravel outside the 2 meter curb. So the
Mm-hmm.
gravel is not really dangerous. You said just at the exit of the corner,
Yeah.
not on the outside and on a braking zone, just at the very, very exit. So you drop a wheel on the gravel, you lose time, and this is what,
Yeah.
because all drivers like to be penalized when they do something wrong. Not penalized by the stewards, penalized by,
By time, yeah. Yeah.
yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, there is no one driver I came across who doesn't like to drive in a street circuit, who doesn't like to drive in Monaco, in Macau, places that if you put the foot wrong, they bite you hard. But
Mm-hmm.
if you don't put the foot wrong and you do a quick lap, the satisfaction is
That
really
much
high.
more. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's interesting. That is definitely a hot topic, and that's great that there is a working group, and it's great that you're a part of it to try and find kind of the best, what the best solution is. And I agree. It's like if it make sure it costs them lap time, they won't do it. And that's the best solution, because then it becomes self-policing, and you don't have to do anything about it.
Yeah, this is what I don't like so much about modern motorsport. In a way, it's good because it pushes the drivers to drive very, very close to their limits. But now with the runoff areas in tarmac, you can run wide, and worst you can have is a penalty. So the accuracy of driving as close as possible to the limit without never exceeding is less important. And
Mhm.
and in the older days, in the very, very old days, sometimes the first mistake you made was your last mistake, and nobody
There.
wants that.
Yeah.
But a good compromise was that you put the foot wrong, you bend the suspension, you lose the race, and so even in my Formula One days, late 80s, early 90s, the real difference between the true champions and the good drivers was more on race pace than in qualifying. Because in qualifying, it was somehow a little bit less difficult to put a very good lap together, even with qualifying tires, which was only one shot. But those really good, like the Schumachers, like the Sennas, like the Prost, they had the ability to stay almost at the best of their capabilities for 60, 70 laps. And this, for normal people like me, it wasn't possible. So you had to pace yourself. Let's just throw numbers. If your accuracy is plus and minus 2%, just throw numbers. In qualifying, you might go at your 99, making sure that probably in that very lap you'd never go to 100% because plus and minus. But in a long run and in the race, you have to always go at 98, because if you get it wrong by 2%, you go to 100 and you still stay on track. And those who have this accuracy tolerance a lot smaller, those are the real champions that I came across on race pace.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good point. And I like the way you did it with percentages, where it is that accuracy to drive the car at the limit with less plus and minus to it. I talk about that in Optimum Drive when you think about like what is that actually in the car? How does the car feel that it's working very, very minute differences in slip angle, front and rear, because ultimately we're talking about overworking a tire or not, and sliding the car too much, whether it's understeer or oversteer or whatever it is, and putting too much heat in it. And that's actually like when you have that high level of accuracy, your brake application is that much more accurate to the exact moment where it should be applied. Your release into the corner, which sets the balance of the car, is, you don't overslide the car into the corner and you don't understeer into the corner. Everything is tidy within, again, like you're suggesting, a very, very narrow window. Your throttle application is very tidy. And I think about, what pops in my head when I'm describing that is like you at Le Mans trying to triple stint a set of tires, trying to outrun a Peugeot and or your teammates. And it is that, I think when you boil it all down, that's what it is. It's that ability to keep the car, really well balanced for 60, 70 laps.
Yes.
And that's really, really hard to do. And Optimum Drive is about the difference between a good driver and a great driver. And I think you very succinctly told that difference in your own way. That was really cool.
Yeah, unfortunately, in our sport, the perception of all these things, it's impossible to have. And it's almost impossible to describe, but even if you can describe, very few people would be patient enough to really listen to it. Other sports where you see the human body doing certain things that it's easier to figure out that you cannot do it and everybody else cannot do it, and so that's a little bit the downside, because people want to see battles, which are, of course, very spectacular. But if you have a good commentator and who can really talk you and walk you through the technique of driving.
Yes.
It's incredible, guys, what just in one corner, what you can do. Accuracy of when to brake, how to brake. Now the braking shape. So the shape means the pressure that you give to
initial
the
pressure versus,
Because when you go at top speed, you have, as you know, the downforce goes with the square of the speed. You go half the speed from 200 to 100, you have one quarter of the downforce. So you have to reduce the pressure, the brake pressure, according to the reducing of the speed, which is not enough. because then when you apply steering, your inner wheel gets lighter.
Yep.
So again, another brake pressure reduction. When to apply the steering, you have to apply the steering exactly in one physical point of the corner to get the correct racing line. But you have to do it at that given speed with that given brake pressure, because you load the front in a good way. It's like winning a lottery somehow. And I can understand you are already bored of listening to this, but
this is exactly what we talk about.
Okay.
We finally got there.
And you haven't even done the turn in if you do these
Exactly.
things properly.
Exactly. Keep going. Keep going.
Plus, you have to do it in traffic with all the aero
Yes.
issues.
The buffeting and, you know.
This is why when a racing driver is saying, which we hear quite often, I've done the maximum I can do, I think this is a big lie. There is,
of course,
human being who can exploit all the potential in the car, because we have a given reaction time, and driving, a big part of driving is memory. But if you want to go really to the limit, you have to react to every single input you get from the car. It's reaction, action, reaction, action. Of course, you pass almost in the same place with almost the same grip and so on and so forth, but every lap is a new story. I'm not telling you, Paul, because you are the teacher of these things, but I'm just sharing with
it's perfect. Keep
kindly listening to us. And so this action and reaction requires time. Actually, it's physically measured, the time that an electric input goes to the brain, gets processed, and goes back to the muscles. And this is why in jet fighters, at one stage, with the F-16, the pilot was determined to be not fast enough to fly the aircraft with that aerodynamic configuration, and then you have a fly-by-wire. So you have a computer between the pilot and the controls. And actually, if you could have a fly-by-wire in a car, you could have a car with a lot more front grip. Actually, I never liked an oversteering car, and it's not good on me, because I think the perfect car is a car with a perfect front grip. But the perfect front grip requires the perfect steering angle. 1 degree more, you lose the rear. And so you ideally, theoretically, you should have a steering trace on the graph, not like this, which is actually what is always happening, because you always feel the grip. So we are human, and we're far from perfect. And I think there's although they're really, really good now, there's still way to improve.
Yeah, I think, and that's something that's really fascinating about driving is, I think, like, having this conversation, you could imagine trying to have this conversation in the 70s. Now we have so much knowledge through the data systems that have been on cars for decades now. And I think that's another thing that really separates us from, and I've talked about this on prior podcasts with engineers and drivers and so on and so forth, but our sport is so measured and to such a level, and it's such a normal thing. Even through karting now, you got the Micron dash with data acquisition within the dash on a kart. And so we've got 6-year-old, 7-year-old kids looking at data, and then that just goes up through all their categories, obviously. And you look at Formula One, and there is so much feedback given to all the drivers, no matter who they are, on areas where, like you were describing, where are my weaknesses? Where am I losing a tenth? Where am I losing a thousandth? Where am I losing some hundredths? And all of that has developed, that we now understand sort of this everything about driving from the car's perspective, of course, because they're measuring everything about the car, and just last week they were doing all their correlation work, testing to see if all their simulation was accurate and whether this car is going to be the car they thought it was going to be. And well, we're going to find out this weekend whether that's true or not with the first race of the season. And the same thing is true of the drivers. Now we understand, and then we can piece it together even better to find that driver car interface that is more efficient, where the engineering team is able to describe what the car needs to get its optimal lap time out of it from what they've calculated in the simulations from the driver input to put the car in that exact right position, throughout not just a corner, but a race, and
Why, Paul, you're interviewing me? You know all these things by yourself, so why are you interviewing me?
because you're Emanuele Pirro, for God's sake. but I think that's all fascinating because we have this knowledge, and I think for you, you with your McLaren driver development program, you have this knowledge, and I think that's and correct me if I'm wrong, but that's a big part of your and McLaren's mentorship for these developing drivers, to get them to a point where, when they're ready and when McLaren's ready, you can put them in an Indy car, you can put them in Formula E, you can put them in maybe a Formula One car.
Actually, Paul, all what we have just said is science. What I've always been interested in is psychology.
Yeah.
And I think there I feel I can give something to young drivers because I've gone through a lot of the issues, and I've always been quite thoughtful in analyzing situation that I came across. So all the things that we have just talked about, a good engineer can do the job. But where I feel I can understand the driver maybe a little bit better than an engineer, and then probably telling him how to deal with issues and with difficulties and with situation in a probably more efficient way than an engineer is all the psychological stuff.
And I would imagine in and out of the car as well, how to be a complete driver.
Yeah. Sometimes you feel like, there's an empathy with certain people more than with others. So sometimes you feel you come across an individual and it happens with, between men and women, thank God. You almost can.
Not that kind of podcast, Emanuele.
Almost can read their mind, and you feel like you kind of understand well what the other person is going through, and you can provide, push the right button to try to help out. Sometimes it's more difficult. But this is the part of my job that I like, and not everybody's willing to be helped to such an extent. Because our sport now less, fortunately, because now drivers they grow up with outside help, but it's still because everybody's got an ego. It's still a sort of a macho sport. So
yes,
I think you have to be very careful in giving advices, but not make them look like advices, just throw ideas on the table. So the way to deliver messages is also something that needs to be tailor-made for different people.
That's perfectly said. And I think, you can say all the right things to someone in the wrong way, and you can hurt them. Because driver confidence is so important. I mean, we remember the sport is risky. And so you have to not feel like you're a fool behind the wheel. You have to feel good about your capabilities and be optimistic about your potential performance.
Absolutely. It's like when you have a son or a daughter, I think every individual needs to be told things in a different way, and if you're lucky that the driver you are helping or the son you or daughter you're having to be efficient needs to be told things in the way that they come natural to you, that's the perfect situation. But some other people, they
Yeah.
need to be told things in a way which is less natural. For instance, I'm more a thoughtful person. It doesn't come easy for me to be hard to be hard on people. I
Yeah.
prefer to make people think, and this is how I was. I had a very good mother for this. She never screamed to me, never. But if she wanted to hurt me, she had to say, "Oh, that was very disappointing." For me, was worse than Islam. But
Yeah.
some people Islam, if
Yeah.
they're told this is very disappointing, they just laugh on, and it doesn't work. So it would be good to really use the best tool for every person.
Yep. Yeah, it's absolutely true. And obviously I've had years and years and years of coaching people, and you were talking about people you suddenly click with, like your soulmate. And they're so easy because you're like, that's a person that thinks like I do. And so I can just say what I would say to myself in this situation, and that will work perfectly for them. And then there are
Correct.
people like you're like, I don't understand anything about them. I don't get it. And somehow you have to find a way to find a common language. You could almost use, we always talk about the engineer race car driver, interface as always being such a critical one within a team. But you could also say that, you could say that at any position within the team, and that includes a driver coach or a driver mentor and a driver as well. You've got to find efficient ways of communicating. And that's definitely the key to success in any of this.
Talking about engineers and drivers, it's often said he's a very good test driver, he's a very fast driver, but he doesn't understand anything about the car. And actually, I'm interested in knowing your view on that. But for me, to drive fast, you cannot drive fast without understanding the car. You would just crash. We were talking before about action and reaction. So driving fast is feeling, reacting, acting, and correcting. This is the process that goes through driving fast. So when you understand what the car does, you know it. And so for me, because it is true, some drivers are very helpful for engineers, some others are completely useless. But for me, it's just a matter of not having the ability to store what you are doing and to translate it into useful words for the engineer. But I cannot believe that there is a driver who drives fast without understanding what he's doing. I don't think this is possible.
Yeah, I think on some level they have to, right? But I think it's two different things. It's their ability to articulate what they're feeling. And I definitely see drivers, I have coached drivers that are very quick, but have a hard time articulating why. A lot of this, and I would add one more. So you were saying it is this loop, it's this feedback loop of feeling and then reacting, and then you're adjusting, and then you're just continuing this loop. And to me, I would add another layer in front of it and say the thing that put you there in the first place was your anticipation and your plan for that corner based on what happened last time. And then you throw it in there with your new greatest best plan for this corner, and you execute that plan. And of course, there's things that happen that you have to react to within that, and that becomes new information for you. And the next time you approach that corner, you put that new information in your brand new plan, and you keep on evolving that every single corner, every break point, every throttle application, you know, all of those things are this constant continuous loop as you're describing, but always beforehand, it's that anticipation. And so when you're driving really well, and one of the books I based my book on was a book called Flow. And you probably have heard of that term of flow when you're, or in the zone, where it's completely subconscious. It's like you driving at your very best. Everything is happening exactly as you expect it. Your little loops are all just happening subconsciously. You're not having to think through any of it. The car is just, everything's great. And you're on an amazing pace. The car feels good, and there's nothing. The easy way to describe it is there's nothing that's surprising you. And through that subconscious process, some people can drive like that, and they don't have any conscious recollection of it. Like they just like, I just get in the car and I go. And I have talked to people like that where they can't describe much of anything because it's being done really subconsciously. And these are those drivers that are super superstitious. Like they don't want to talk about technique. They don't want to analyze technique. They're like, just let me get in the car and drive. I'm fast. Because they're afraid that you'll unravel it and they won't know how to put it back together again.
Okay.
So there are people that are like that. I know a few. It's not a lot, but they can be fast, but they drive purely subconsciously. And they actually, they just don't think about it. And it's funny. I don't know if you've ever known, here's another one. This may be more controversial. You don't have to be smart, intelligent to be fast. There are fast drivers of all sorts of intelligence levels.
Mm-hmm.
And some have very long, successful careers.
You have to be smart to be good.
You think so? I think
no,
it can be learned over time. And
I rephrase. I use the word talent, although I really don't like because it's such a broad terminology.
I don't like it either.
Yeah, but let us allow me to use it.
Okay, go.
Time being, you have a given talent. Let's say you are not a very intelligent person, and you reach.
That's me.
You reach a high level. If you were intelligent, you would go another level. I mean,
I agree.
There is something you can add to whatever package of quality that you have, even if it's very high, by elaborating, by understanding it, by and for me, longevity is also a sign of intelligence. You know, if you see drivers like Mario Andretti or Valentino Rossi, you know, people who had to understand so many different techniques and relearn them. So what was automatic, instead of being a help, it would be your enemy, because you have to do something different. I don't know how much you guys know about. I'm sorry, I've got an incoming call, very bad, but I need to stop it. What you guys know about riding a bike, but your body posture, your body position, or the rider body position changed throughout the years a lot. And Valentino Rossi, you know, you have, especially when you get sort of older, you still perform quite well, but just because it comes automatic to you. So I think at that stage of your career, it's incredibly difficult to learn change, something new,
to adapt.
So I think those guys who have been around for a long time, again, I'm thinking of Andretti or even Emerson Fittipaldi.
Lovely guy.
Lovely guy. It's really, it's very meaningful, you know. It's difficult to be at the top for a long time.
Yeah,
it requires a lot of effort.
I'm just saying a lot of that can be done without conscious thought.
It
People
could be. It could be.
and the thing that and the other side of the coin with intelligence is you get people that overthink everything and they slow their progress because
I
they
agree.
yeah, and so somewhere in there is a happy medium, but it's sort of like what you and I were talking about earlier. It's like how different drivers can be personality wise. They can be incredibly different
Same result.
and have very similar result and a different process to get there and different priorities. They're like, I never think about that. And when someone says they don't think about it, what they're saying is they don't consciously think about it. But to get around the racetrack, you have to think about it. It's whether you're consciously acknowledging that you're thinking about it is what's different. So it's because we have this two sides to us. We have our conscious side. Our conscious intellect or bandwidth out of everything we can do with our minds, it's only 5% is our consciousness. 95% is subconscious things we're just doing. We're breathing, we're talking, we're doing all these things without thinking about them. And the conscious bit is just 5% kind of at the top. And everything else is done automatically by our subconscious. And so driving is learning one thing at a time consciously, and then creating, as you said, creating a muscle memory out of that. And now it's in your subconscious as your program, and so on and so forth. That's how we roll through anything.
When you say sometimes thinking too much is not good, I agree. I think for sure I came across situations where if I thought a little bit less, I would just set my mind more free and I would see less ghosts and it would be better. But I think the big champions, they think a lot and they can deal with everything. The Lewis Hamilton, the Ayrton Senna, the Michael Schumacher. I think
the very top are very somehow they get very similar at the very top.
Amongst their qualities is also the one that they really think a lot of things, but they deal with them in an efficient way.
Efficient way, yes. Perfectly said.
Makes a difference.
Perfectly said.
Second time that you tell me perfectly said.
Only twice. Well, I think it is to me. I mean, that the thing is, of course, the engineers would love to have robots drive the car, right? But this part about it, the psychology of human beings, of individuals trying to do something at a very, very high level, and that level is extremely monitored. Like they're going to know your performance from the moment you get in the car to the moment you get out. It is a very challenging thing for someone to do. I mean, you are completely exposed. Normally in life, we try not to speak up too much. It's better to stay silent and let them think you might be a fool than open your mouth and confirm it, right? That's like our normal lives. We're careful. But when you get in that race car and you have Emanuele Pirro as your driving mentor, and you have McLaren and its data acquisition on the car, that is something else. Like you can't hide, and you have to be accountable. You have to have driver confidence. You have to have thick skin, right? You have to be able to accept criticism, even put in a very nice way, but you have to be that to move forward, right? And it's a very difficult environment.
For sure, and if you want to be a successful driver, you have to have the ability to deal with it. So I think very often the amount of pressure these young boys have, but it's also your job to find out if they can deal with the pressure. I think if you make their life as easy as possible, you put the red carpet in front of them. At one stage, somebody's gonna give them the bill. So you better find out early. And one of the things amongst all the others that I'm trying to look when I evaluate a driver and when I try to read between the lines is yeah, the capability of dealing with difficulties, the capability of dealing with pressure. There are, in all sports, there are athletes who deliver their best in testing, and athletes who deliver their best in the most important event of the year.
Right.
So of course, the one you want to be is the second category, but it's quite different. Many football players, tennis players, skiers, whatever, they
Yes.
can do certain things in testing, in practice, and somehow they can't do it in a race, or in certain situation where you have I think in motor racing it's very, very difficult to have a perception of this, because the quality of driving within your capability, a good day or a bad day, it's plus and minus maybe 1, 2, 3 tenths of a second,
Yes.
not more than that. But in other disciplines, you have football players who go through a period where whatever they try, it works. And, the year later, for God's sake, you try easier things and just it doesn't work. So self-confidence make you try. When you try, often you succeed, and so on and so forth. I think the mind, it's a very, very fascinating element.
Endlessly fascinating.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think to your point, like of self-confidence, and it's sort of what I was talking about a little bit earlier, where your self-confidence has to be not based on other people telling you you're good at something. It has to be something that you believe and you understand, like about yourself. That's self-confidence. And that's where someone is a good. I remember you brought up Valentino Rossi, is my favorite MotoGP rider of all time, and it was fun watching him in Bathurst actually do quite well last weekend. And he was always known. The phrase is he was a Sunday rider, because the races were on Sundays. It's like, watch what he does on Sunday, and he always could pull that out, and that is. And we were talking about, like, visor down, and you're saying, I'm not really different. It's sort of like when I'm just more honest when I'm racing. That's really me. Now I'm nice me, but when I'm racing, that's really me. And I thought that was a great point. But that's the thing, where you're sitting at the start, and you got the normal butterflies of a start, but as soon as the start goes, it's whether you go, oh boy, here we go, or you go, oh boy, here we go. Like, I've got this. Like, there's just this feeling inside that you're in the right place at the right moment, and this is an opportunity for you to shine. Or you're going, oh boy, I hope this goes well. Oh boy, I hope no one runs into me. You have that two very different mentalities where, you're being rushed along with the race. It's almost carrying you along, or mentally you're leading this thing, like you're in it to win it. And
But
that,
interestingly, sorry,
no, go ahead.
interestingly, often the people love more those who don't think so much. I think Mr. Perfect very rarely is liked by the fans. If you see, those who were
That's
getting it
true too.
often wrong, like Gilles Villeneuve,
Yeah.
because he was trying more than he should have done in many occasions,
Yeah.
he was just loved by people.
Yep.
A driver like Alan Prost, who has been, if you think about the etymology of the word efficiency, means best result for
Least effort.
least effort.
Yeah.
This is Alan Prost, and for what he has achieved in motorsport, he does not have so much, let's say, success within the people. Of course, he's a great champion, but I think people could love him more if you only measure his success.
Yeah.
And
I mean, that's a very, I mean, that's a very true thing. I mean, and that's just our nature. We love an underdog. We love someone that is punching above their weight, doing something that is apparently superhuman, doing something that's seems careless or dangerous, that we're, as a fan, it's like YouTube videos, like people doing dumb things on skis or dirt bikes or whatever. Like, we'll never not watch one of those videos. They're incredibly entertaining. And someone that's just incredibly good at it, that's incredibly precise at it, well, you can look at like a blooper reel is much more watched on YouTube than Michaela Schifrin's, 95th or 96th or 97th World Cup win, that, is happening last year when she was
I
breaking all
think
these records.
one thing is
People would still rather watch the
admiration.
crashes.
One thing is admiration. Another thing is sympathy. And I think you can have both. Often you have both in one
Yeah.
person. For instance, when you see, when you read some athletes' autobiographies, one that I really liked, and not only me, many people, was Andre Agassi's the Andre Agassi's autobiography.
Mm-hmm.
And I liked it because he's disclosing himself. He's not wanting to look good. He just discloses, like he would talk to a close friend, all the issues he had
Right.
to go through, all the difficulties. And for me, that was really the ultimate way I want to hear somebody's life story. Yeah, I don't want, and I'm
Honestly.
actually, I read quite a few of those because I'm writing my own autobiography by myself without a ghostwriter, just by
I
myself.
know, I know the feeling. It's easier writing
Yes,
about something
but
else
you
than
are a
I don't
pro.
want to do
You
it
are
of
a pro.
myself. You asked me about that way back when too. You're like, oh,
Yes,
you wrote a
yeah,
book, and we talked about that.
yes. It's finished by. I'm just correcting, but I have no time. But it's a long thing, and I'm just disclosing and trying to walk the patient reader through a path of hurdles, of privilege, of having come across very special people, of witnessing incredible situation. And the last thing I want to share is my success that I had.
Right.
So I hope I succeed in this.
Well, I mean, that's why you are the perfect podcast guest as well, because it isn't you just going, look at me. And not that I've had anyone like that, actually. All of my guests have been similar because I want to talk about driving and your method and all those things that we have talked about. And I think your autobiography, I'll be first in line to grab one of those. And I know we're running out of time, so let's wrap it up, Emanuele. I want to tell you what a privilege it's been to get to chat with you.
Likewise, likewise.
I knew it was going to be really interesting because I know how thoughtful you are, and I use that your thoughtfulness.
No, but it's good to have a confrontation, and this requires time, we know, and requires patience for those who are, as they said, patient enough to listen to all of this. But because nowadays everything is so superficial, the news have to come very quickly, and often you only read the headlines. I believe there is still some value in dedicating time to go
Yeah.
deeper into certain things. And I think a podcast is a very good tool, modern tool, for those who want to use it to go that path.
Especially when you get Emanuele Pirro on your podcast. So I want to thank you officially for your time because I know you're about to head off to the first Grand Prix of the year. You're incredibly busy. I want to wish you all the luck in the world with the McLaren driver development program. I think that's really exciting. I know that's new for you and you love the challenge of it. It's perfect for you. McLaren was very smart in getting someone. And I also can't wait to see what you're driving at Goodwood in September. And hopefully you're going to be winning some more races there as well.
That's historic racing is, maybe we can do another podcast talking about historic racing, because it's a very fascinating world, actually interesting and also scaring in a way, because so much success of historic racing from both participant and public, somehow it can be scary, because why do we like so much the past? As I said, I like the present and the future, but why so much success? So we could set another talk about
All
that.
right, I'm going to take that as an offer to come back, and I will do that anytime you want. I wish you the very best with everything, sir. Again, thank you for all of your time and all of your wisdom, and thank you everyone out there for joining me for another Optimum Drive podcast presented by TFL. Thanks everybody. We'll see you next time.